guys, welcome back, welcome to a new video, welcome to my 2023 reading wrap up. I'm so sorry it came out late. It was actually supposed to come out just before 2023 ended, but I've just been so busy and I haven't had any time to film, so I am posting this in 2024. Happy New Year. I just posted my January TBR, so go check that out if you haven't. I'm so excited for what books I'm going to be reading in 2024, the new releases, as well as finishing the books on my physical TBR, and I'm so freaking excited. But before we can start fresh and start reading all the books I want to read in 2024, we've got to say goodbye to the books from 2023. That doesn't mean we're never going to read them again, it just means we're going to go over, refresh our minds, review every single book I read in 2023, and I'll be telling you guys just in like 1 or 2 sentences if I enjoyed it and if I would recommend it. So I would either say yes or no if I don't recommend it. If I don't remember what I read, I'm literally just gonna say I can't remember, or if I hated it, I'll just say I hated it. But I just can't wait to go over every single book I read in 2023. In 2023, I actually met my reading goal of 100 books, literally just in time. I finished my last book, I think, the day of New Year's Eve, and I was so stressed out. And my goal for 2024 is again 100 books, but I want to reach it in a quicker time than I did this year. This year I felt like I was rushed to try and get to 100 because I think I got to like mid-December and I was only on like 95 books and I was stressing out. Before we start, if you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Amy, and if you're returning, welcome back. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, it will help me so much. We're nearly at 500 and I can't wait. That's actually all I've really got to say for now. Now let's get on to talking about the books I read in 2023. What I did is I have like all my books like next to me, but obviously some of my books, actually quite a lot of my books, I read on my Kindle. What I did on my iPad, I wrote every single month, I wrote every single book I read in that month in kind of order of how I read it. I don't know the absolute order because I got it from my goodreads and some of my goodreads didn't really make sense in terms of when I read it, so I just did it to the best I can, and it does all add up to 100, which is good. But what I did is I ordered the stacks as well around me in months just to help me organize what I'm saying. So in January I read 5 books. Obviously my reading journey really started this year in terms of physical books. I'm going to go over the first 5 books that I read in 2023. They're right here. So number 1 is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This book I gave a 4 stars. I love this book. This is Hannah and Garrett's book. It's the first book in the Off-Campus series, and I definitely recommend the Off-Campus series. Obviously it was written quite a while ago. It's not like a new release or anything. I think it was written like in the last 10 years. I love Hannah and Garrett, like I just love them, and this Off-Campus series is not just a sports romance, but it's a book where it's like found family, all the couples and characters are interconnected, so I definitely recommended this book. Next is Twisted Loves, which is the first book in the Twisted series by Anna Hugh. I gave this one a 4 stars. I love the Twisted series, so yes for this book and yes to the series. Next is Twisted Games. Again, this is the second book in the Twisted series by Anna Hugh. Love this one so much. I gave this one a 5 stars. This is Bridget and Rye's story. This is a princess slash bodyguard trope. Just love this couple so much. The spice, the tension, but also like the kindness of Rise and the grumpy ex-sunshine trope as well. It just owned my heart. So yes to this book as well. So definitely recommend checking this one out. Next is The Cheat Sheet. This one is a sports romance. This is a college romance. It's 2 people that become best friends and then it kind of turns from friends to lovers, and it's fake dating, which we love, and yeah, this is a good book as well. So this one I gave a 3.5. It was nothing special, but I really enjoyed it. It was calm, it was an easy read, it was fast paced, and I thought this is the perfect summer read, and I wish I did read it more in the summertime. But yes, if you haven't read it, it's from Sarah Adams and it's so good. Last but not least, in January I read A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime, and this is by Monica Murphy. This book was so good. I gave this one also a 3.5. This wasn't anything special, but I just loved like the enemies to kind of lovers. But when Crew and Ren get together, it's just so cute. Like the stuff Crew does for her, even though it's supposed to be set in school, whatever, I was just obsessed with them, and it's just cute. It's a cute book. I don't remember too much about it just because it wasn't my favourite book, but again, it's a good book, so definitely recommend. Now let's move on to my February reads. In February, it's the month of my birthday and Valentine's Day. Again, I've read some romances. I read 4 books in February. Not too much just because it's my birthday month and I was in my final year of university, so I was so busy, like trying to work on my dissertation, obviously going out, and just too much for me. So I only read 4 books, but the 4 books we read were from 2 series actually. So I read 2 books from 2 series. So the first 2 books I read is The Fine Print and Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. This is from the Dreamland Billionaire series. This is book 1 and this is book 2. Book 1 I gave it 4 stars. I loved it. I love the setup. I love the plot. I love the introduction to all these characters. This is about 3 brothers and they all have a wheel that their granddad sets, and they all have a task from his will. In order for them to get a part in his company, they all have to do different tasks. Rowan's task is to go back to work and be part of their dad's business. They work at kind of like Disneyland. They own like kind of Disneyland, and he's supposed to like get involved with the sketching and all that type of stuff. And then the second book is Terms and Conditions. This one is my ultimate favourite. I gave it 5 stars. Declan and Iris, they own my heart. This couple right here is goals. Like, it's absolute goals. So if you haven't read the series, definitely recommend checking them out, because these books, I annotated them, I love them, and I will be rereading them. Maybe not this year, just because I have so many books I need to get to. I know these are my go-to if I'm in the need to just like read a book that I already know I will love, so definitely recommend these. And then the last 2 books I read in February are part of a series. So the first one is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Tessa Bailey is another author that I've loved so much in 2023, and It Happened One Summer was such a good grumpy ex-sunshine romance. When Brandon was groveling, he was groveling hard, and I just love this couple so much. So yes, I definitely recommend. This one I gave a 4 stars because it was just so freaking good, and I just love a good grumpy ex-sunshine trope. Like, I don't know who doesn't. It's just chef's kiss. And last but not least was Hook, Line and Sinker. So as I was reading It Happened One Summer, Piper has a younger sister called Hannah, and I really wanted her to have her own story. I was already kind of shipping her with Brandon's best friend, and knowing that they actually had their own book, I was absolutely buzzing. I had finished the book and I was like, oh, I wish there was a book for them. And I realised I had just purchased the second book in the series, but I didn't know what it was about. When I saw it was about Hannah's story, I was obsessed, and I read it. It did disappoint me a little bit more. I think I liked their chemistry a little bit more in the first book, but I loved like the music quote, little texts they would send each other, and all in all, it was a really good book. I gave this one a 3.5, so yes, I definitely recommend this one. Now let's move on to March. March, I read a total of 6 books. Again, mostly romance, because obviously in the start of the year I just stuck to romance because that's what I enjoyed. It wasn't until I think July time or August time that I started to kind of get into fantasy. But in March we had a lot of good reads. These are the 6 books I read in March. So first, continuing from the Twisted series, I read Twisted Hate. This one focuses on Josh and Jules. These 2 hate each other. I really enjoyed them. I didn't like the enemies to lovers aspect as much as I usually do. I love a good enemies to lovers, but Josh, he was in the wrong a lot of times, and the way he treated Jules, I just didn't like it. This one I gave a 3.5 stars because it wasn't my favourite out of all the books, but again, still a really solid read. Next was Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is the 3rd book in the Billionaire series. This follows Callahan, which is the last brother, and let me tell you this. The last brother, Callahan, he is my baby. When I met him in the other books, I was like, he needs his own book. And his story, I don't even know what to say. This is a ex-best friends actually. It is old flame, it is a single mom, it is the golden retriever energy that Callahan is, but he has a deeper story and experience that has shaped him into who he is. And I gave this book a 5 stars just because I loved Callahan, and I loved the relationship between him and Alana. I hated the miscommunication trope between these 2, but when they did get together afterwards, and definitely recommend this book if you haven't. Dreamland Billionaire series is a solid series, so definitely recommend checking those out. So the next book is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I've never read any anything from her before. I decided to pick up this book because I've seen it everywhere, and it's a book that I've actually wanted to read for a long time. I actually made a YouTube video about this, but I don't know if I deleted it or not because I don't think I liked it at the end. But it was such a good book. I originally gave it like a 4.5, but when I revisited and rethought about how I felt about the book, I gave it a 3 stars, just because I didn't like the toxicity between the two characters. It does deal with domestic violence and domestic abuse. What really solidified the book for me and really made me enjoy it was the ending. I absolutely loved the female main character. Everything she went through was just so sad, so raw, but the way she ends this book and after they had their daughter, like, it's so sweet. Like, her and everything she goes through, like, she is so strong, so strong, and she shouldn't forgive him for what he did. And I don't know if I'm going to read the second book. I'm not going to lie, I'm not that interested about reading the second book. I know there is a second book, but I wasn't as attached to the characters as I thought I would be. But yeah, I really read this one because it was on TikTok and I saw it, but it is an okay read, but it's not my favourite really at all. Next is Twisted Lies by Anna Hugh. This is the 4th book in the Twisted series. I gave this book a 5-star. This book, Christian and Stella, they own my heart. This whole series owns my heart with these two characters right here. I just loved it. Stella, she's introverted, but she's also an influencer at the same time. She's one of those kind souls. And Christian, he's a billionaire. You hear him in the other books and he kind of comes off as kind of mysterious, but when you meet him in this book and all the things he does for Stella, he is smitten with her from the first moment he meets her, and I just love these two together, so I definitely recommend this book. Next we have Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This one is a smutty, spicy read. If you want something spicy, if you want something smutty, read this book. Not much to the plot of it, but it's spicy. A good book. I can't wait to read Wildfire, which is the second book of the Maple Hill series, and yeah, it was a really good book, solid, definitely recommend it if you really like smut. Apart from that, there wasn't much of a storyline, but I did give it 4 stars just because I loved the smut and I liked how it's just an easy, cozy, fast-paced read. Then last but not least, I read King of Wrath. This is the first book in the Kings of Sin series, again by Anna Hugh. Obviously, I finished one series by her. I needed to start a new one ASAP because I love her writing style so much, and this book right here, I gave this book a 4 stars. One features Dante and Vivian. This is an arranged marriage. It's kind of enemies to lovers. Dante is marrying her to get revenge on her father, but they fall in love, yada yada yada. Loved it, lived it, breathed it, love it. Go read it if you haven't. That was all the books that I read in March. It was quite a good month. I didn't read too much, didn't read too little, but obviously as my exams got closer and closer, I thought I was kind of stopped reading as much. So I didn't really read as much in the next coming months, but I'm still excited to talk about the next books I read. Now we're going to move on to April. In April I read 3 books, so again not as lot as I said before. The first book I read in April is The Locker Room by Megan Quinn. I originally read this on my Kindle, but I loved it so much I decided to get in paperback. I only gave it a 3.5 stars, but when I was reading it I think I had in my head given it 4.5, but as I thought about it I was like maybe 3.5, 4 stars. Really good book if you're trying to have something that's steamy but kind of has a plot to it and just really enjoyable and really fun, so I definitely recommend reading this if you haven't. Next is Punk 57. So again, the next 2 books I'm talking about are from a video that I made. I don't know if I still kept them out, but I read Punk 57. Actually when I read it I gave it a 4 stars, but now thinking about it I only gave it a 3 stars, maybe even a 2.5. This one is supposed to be like young adult. This book I did enjoy it when I read it, but thinking about it now, some of the tropes and some of the stuff that happened, I was just like, no, it was just a bit childish and a bit weird, but it wasn't a boring read at all, and I definitely think it is a good book. I just don't think that it was my favourite. Last but not least, I read Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Scott. This is from the Knockerman series. This is book 1, and this book, I love this book. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I love these 2 characters so much. The chemistry between these 2 characters and the way Lucy Scott brings alive the world is just amazing. I love this series. It's found family, all the characters interconnect. There's 3 books books in this series, and again they're all interconnected. If you want a book that you don't just fall in love with the main two characters but all the side characters, I definitely recommend this one because it is a really good book. It was all the books that I read in April. In May I only read 2 books. In May I was super busy. That was when most of my deadlines were. The first book was The Hate You Give. This book I read because I was doing an essay on it, but also one of my all-time favourite movies is The Hate You Give, and it is actually based on this beautiful book right here by Angie Thomas. I gave this book a 3 stars just because I loved the movie a little bit more. That's why I kind of regret watching the movie first. I wish I had read this book a long time ago before I watched the movie. Loved obviously the storyline, the plot of it. The Hate You Give is about police brutality, shooting of black people, and how it can not only affect the person that dies but also those around them, and also about raising your voice, especially as a woman in this type of world alongside being a teenager. And it is a really good book. A plot, obviously it's not light-hearted, don't expect it to be a light-hearted book. It does deal with certain topics like race and stuff like that, but it is a so important book. But again, it's still all in all I loved it, and obviously I wrote an essay on it, so I had to love it, and the movie's really good. So if you haven't watched the movie, definitely check it out, and definitely check out this book because it is still a good book. And then last but not least, in May I read Happy Place. Happy Place, I gave it 5 stars. I loved it so much. This one's by Emily Henry. This is about 5 friends, I believe. Yeah, 5 friends, and they have this happy place, and every year they go there to this like summer house, and we meet the 2 main characters. So they were a couple. They first met at this happy place, but then they break up a while later. Their friends don't know they're broken up, so what they do is they agree to pretend that they haven't broken up and they're still together. The story as a whole is just about friendship. It's about life and how life changes and how we change, and sometimes those that you might be in love with, just because you're in love with them doesn't mean you're made for each other. And this book was just so good, and I can't wait to tackle more of Emily Henry's books in 2024. So in June I didn't read that much because obviously I was on holiday. It was my brother's wedding. I was just adjusting to being back home, and I was starting a new job. So in June I read 6 books. Sorry guys, I was just checking in on the brightness because it is starting to get a bit darker now as I'm filming this, because I've literally filmed like 3 videos today, so it's getting darker and darker each time, so I'm trying to like zoom through before it gets dark. The first book was Magnolia Parks. This book I gave a 4 star / 3.5. This one is by Gossip Girl, but in the UK, in London. I loved the story, I loved the world. Very much gave me Gossip Girl vibes, which I loved. It was just the plot that I personally found hard to connect with. It might be due to the fact that it took me about a month to read it, because I started it when I first went on holiday and I didn't finish it until the end of June because it was just so hard to read. I wasn't in the right mindset to read, but it is quite a thick book. I just love the cover so much. There are new covers for it, but I just have the old one still, and I did annotate a few pages, but it just wasn't my favourite book. It does have a lot of toxicity between relationships because her and her boyfriend / friend or ex-boyfriend is a very complicated relationship, let's just say. But the thing that really solidified the book for me was mainly the ending. The mystery of this book and the ending, the plot twist, I was actually shocked, and I am excited to finish the rest of the series in the universe. I'm not going to say don't read Magnolia Parks. It isn't my favourite series so far. I'm only in the first book, and I do want to read this book again just because it took me such a long time to read the book when usually I don't. So I don't think it held my attention because I just kept changing when I was reading it, and it's kind of in between reading other books. Might be a book that you really enjoy. If you like Gossip Girl, definitely recommend this one. This is one of my favourite books in the entire world, and that is Consider Me by Becca Mack. This is from the Playing for Keeps series. This is book 1, and this follows Carter. Carter, Carter, Carter. That's all I've got to say. Carter, Carter, Carter. My baby. He is my baby, and I love him. Like, ugh. Beautiful. If you want a good book, spicy but groveling, book boyfriend, read this book. I'm sorry to get so aggressive, but I love this book with my whole heart. I gave it a 5 stars. I actually want to give it a trillion stars because it is amazing. So good. I love this series. Becca Mack, the series Chef's Kiss. Next is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book right here, I really enjoyed this book. This again was a very cozy, simple, easy read. I love the fact that it focuses on women in STEM, and Olive. I just found this book so hilarious as well. Was so fast paced, so cozy, such a good read. Obviously there was some jargon in this book that I just didn't understand because it is about women in STEM and it is about science, stuff like that, but I just really loved the plot. The plot was really solid. I love the fake dating trope, and it is really good book, so check out this book. I can't wait to read some more books by Ali Hazelwood. Next we have The Mistake, which is the second book in the off-campus series. It focuses on John, Logan and Grace, and this book I really enjoyed. I don't think this was my favourite book in the off-campus series. She gave this book a 3 stars. She can't remember much of the plot. I think that might just say how much I didn't enjoy it as much as the others, but again, still good solid read. And last but not least, in June I read Play With Me, which is the second book in the Playing for Keeps series. This one follows Garrett and Jenny. Jenny is Carter's little sister, and Garrett is Carter's best friend, and yes, we have brother's best friend trope. This book again, consider me beautiful. Garrett, oh my gosh, he is so hot. Where's my Garrett? Where's my Carter? Because these boys right here, and Jenny as well, she's fierce, she's sexy, she's unstoppable. We love it. We love a strong female main character. It's just, it warms my heart. Girl vibes. I'm always gonna be a girl's girl, and Jenny. Last but not least, I read Darling Venom. I gave this one a 3.5 stars. I don't really remember too much about this book, but I didn't love it as much as I wish I could, but I did give it a 3.5/3 stars. That rating's not bad at all. It just means that it lacked something, that I couldn't give it a 4 or above. Those were all the books that I read in June. July now. July. So in July, I read 24 books. 24 books Amy read in July. Even I'm shocked. The highest from all of them was 6 books. I read 24 books. I don't know what type of crack I was on in July, but the fact that I was able to read that many books, I was so shocked, but I was so proud of myself. And now we're going to talk about all 24 books that I read. It was a wild month, to say the least, but I am really excited to get into the books I read in July. First, I read Pray Tell, which I gave 4 stars. This one is a brother's best friend. It is a dark romance. It has something called The Hunt. So their story was just hot, spicy, and that's all I got to say. Next was Shut Out, which I gave a 3 stars. This was a brother's best friend romance. Again, this one's a hockey romance, close proximity, and it was just a cute, comfy, spicy read, so definitely recommend checking that out. Next was Praise. I gave this book a 1 star. I'm not gonna lie, it was horrendous. I don't even want to talk about it, so I'm just going to move on. Next was Into the Tide. I gave this one a 3 stars. This book, I'm not going to lie, I actually have no idea or no recollection of what the hell actually happened in this book. All I know is I gave it 3 stars because that's what's on my Goodreads, but I actually know nothing about this book. Next is Malibu Rising. This book I ended up giving a 0. I DNF'd it. Couldn't get into it. I found it extremely boring. I think it was supposed to be like a historical kind of thing, but it was also boring. Like I like historical if it's like romance. Like I really like historical, like Romeo and Juliet, Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, that kind of stuff. But something about this book, I didn't enjoy it, so I didn't read it. I didn't finish off reading it, so I DNF'd it, but I still included it because I started it and it's a book that I started, so it still counts. It's just that I DNF'd it after a while because I just couldn't get into it as much as I wanted to. Next we have The Empire of Lust. I gave this one a 3 stars. This one is a best friend dad trope. I didn't enjoy it that much because I like age gap, but like 3 to 4 years, not like 20 years age gap. I just don't enjoy that, especially like dad's best friend, like what is going on. Gave it 3 stars because it was spicy and I love spicy reads, so that's why. Next we have Wicked Devil, which is part of a series. I gave this a 3 stars. This is about a group of boys who play basketball, I believe, or are on some type of sporting team in high school, and they're kind of known as like the popular kids, but they're also kind of bullies, I'm not gonna lie. I gave the first book a 3 stars. I actually have no idea again what this book happened in it. I just know it has a bit of bullying in it and it's about popular guys, so that's actually it. Next is Behind the Net. I gave this one a 3 stars. This one's a sporting romance. It's part of a series, but I don't know what the series is because I only read the standalone. I don't think I'm going to read any of the other books, but it was a good comfy read. It was cozy, it was simple, and it was spicy. Next is Nanny for the Neighbours. This one I gave a 2 stars. There's no real plot in this. It's a reverse Hiram, but there's no plot at all. Just spice. And if you like that, go for you. But I actually like a plot with my spice. And this one just didn't have a plot. And yeah, I just didn't like it. The only plot it had was like 2 of the guys were really, really into her, but the 3rd guy was just really hesitant. This author, I read like 3 books from her and they all had the same thing. The only reason I continued reading the books is because of the smart. But apart from that, the plot, not there at all. Next is Beyond the Game. This one is a 3 stars. This is a one night stand. No type of miscommunication, and she was really into him and she didn't like not hate him or anything like that. And seeing these 2 characters get into like the kind of family role was really cute, but again, nothing really major in the plot. Next is Savage Devil, which is book 2 in the series where I had a Wicked Devil, which I mentioned. It's called the Devils of Sun Valley series. This one is a teen mom sports romance. This one I enjoyed a little bit more than the first book, just because it didn't have as much of the bullying trope. I hate the bullying trope, I'm not gonna lie. I just don't like it. I like enemies to lovers, but not someone bullying, and that's not really enemies to lovers, is it? It's just someone bullying the other person. Next we have Pucking Around. This one is a reverse Hiram as well. I gave this one a 3 stars. This one, not much to it. There was a bit of a plot which I did enjoy, and there was good smart which I did enjoy, but apart from that, not the best book that I've read. Next is Cruel Devil, which is the 3rd book in the series that I mentioned before. This one I gave a 3 stars. I actually can't remember what happened in this book either. And number 14 is Cruel Promise. This one I gave a 2.5 stars. This one was even worse. I couldn't remember the plot, but I just know that it was even worse. Like, do you know when you know something is so bad, like all you remember is that it was bad, but you don't know why it was bad? And that is what it was with this series. Like, the first 2 books were alright. When you get to the 3rd and 4th book, I just hated it, and yeah, it was weird. Next we have A Court of Thorns and Roses. This one is the 1st book in the ACOTAR series. You guys know how much I love the ACOTAR series, so reading the 1st book was amazing. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. This one was more of an intro to the book. I would always say this: if a book is from a series and it is the 1st book, a lot of times I won't give the book a 5 stars, at least the 1st book, because to me the 1st book is always like an introduction to the world, introduction to the characters, unless the series is based on different characters and you don't have to read each book and not essentially connected. But when a book is distinctly connected by book, I never really gave the 1st book a 5 star. 4 stars means I still liked it, and I loved A Court of Thorns and Roses. It was the start of me loving fantasy, and I definitely recommend checking out ACOTAR because I love it so much. Next is A Triple Duty Bodyguard. This one's based on, is similar to The Nanny for the Neighbours. Gave this one a 2.5, 2 stars. It wasn't that good either. It has 3 guys bodyguarding for 1 girl. Don't really understand that. Again, 2 of the guys are really into her. At the beginning they show it, the 3rd guy's reserved. I don't have time for that, and I don't really enjoy reverse Hiram's as much. If I want a little bit more spice, then maybe I'll go to them, but it wasn't really a good book. I just go there for the smart. Those are the books I go for the smart. Some books I go for the plot, and yeah, this one just has no real plot really. Next is Power Play. I gave this book a 3 stars. This one is journalist and athlete, so they're both at college, and she is a journalist, aspiring journalist, and she gets an interview with one of the most popular guys at school. Next we have Faking with Benefits. Again, this is same as the Nanny for the Neighbours. Gave that 2 stars. Next we have Kiss the Shatter. This is from a series that I discovered this year. This one's actually in like a 10 book series, and the 2 books that I read from this series are actually like the 6th and 7th book, but I actually adored it. Again, this book is quite similar to the Off-Campus series, but a lot more adult. The 1st book I read from that series was Kiss the Shatter. I gave this one a 4 stars. This one's Brother's Best Friend, but they're kind of like enemies to lovers, but there's some mystery, there's some type of like chaos that happens. And then following up from that we have Kiss for Salvage. I gave this book a 5 stars just because this book just pulls at every single heartstring, and I love these characters so much. Like, Oh my gosh. This one's like a found family. It has hockey in it. It has those different tropes. Her brother is actually like, I loved her brother. Like, I really can't wait to get into his book. These books I read on my Kindle, and I definitely do want to get a physical copy to read them again and annotate them, because I don't actually remember as much as I would if I had a physical copy, because for some reason when I read on a Kindle it just doesn't go into my head long term. Next we have Devious Lies. This I gave 3 stars. This is Enemies to Lovers. And then next we have Hat Trick. This one is from a series. This is A Grumpy Ex Sunshine. Groveling sports romance is where the female grovels, which we love, where she's kind of known as like a cold-hearted bitch. I'm not gonna lie, that she's a cold-hearted bitch, and she doesn't realise what she's lost until she's lost it. So she has this sports guy after her. He's always fancied her. She never gives him time of day, and it gets to the point where he actually gives up, and then she actually realises how much she likes him, so she's groveling to get him, which I really enjoyed. This one I gave 3 stars, not much to it. It was fun, fast paced, good read. Next we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book I gave 5 stars. Again, this is in a video where I read TikTok viral books, and I love this book so much. The hype is real, so definitely recommend checking this out. Evelyn, she's really misunderstood, and I just love the mystery. It's not just about romance and heartbreak and like obviously 7 husbands and knowing the drama, but there's so much mystery with it, which I was shocked. I was on the edge of my seat, and yeah, I'm really excited to read more from her. I definitely do want to read Daisy Jones and the Six, because I know it's a TV show and I know loads of people boast about the book, so yeah, this was a really good book. Then last but not least, in July I read Addicted to You. This book I gave 3 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much. As I've said, the first book in a series a lot of times I don't enjoy, and with this book what really brought up the rating was the end of the book. I absolutely loved the end of the book. I feel like it does have a good solid plot, and I can't wait to read more about it. I think the reason why I didn't like it is just I didn't like the fact that these two are just making their addictions worse. It's about 2 best friends. They both have addictions. One's addicted to sex, one's addicted to alcohol, and basically they pretend to be in a couple to hide their addictions, and all they're doing is literally allowing each other to have these addictions. And it's not even just that, it's like she's saying to him, oh no, you should not be drinking, da, 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 vice versa him, and it's like, you're both doing it, you're both being hypocrites. Like, it doesn't make sense. But I do believe they are a really good couple, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. This universe is like 2 series, so I know it's this series, the Addicted series, but it's also the Calloway sisters. So the main character, she has 2 sisters. So I am excited to read the second book, which is Ricochet. I think that is on my bookshelves. Yes, it is. So I am excited to give this book another chance, because I did have high hopes for it, so I'm hoping that the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, how many books there is, I'm going to enjoy it a lot more. But those were all the reads that I read in July. July was a very busy month. I read a lot of Kindle books. That's literally majority of all I did. I think it's just because I could just read them so quickly. Like, I literally was taken everywhere. When I went to Ghana, I was reading on my Kindle. I think I read about 4 books a day, I'm not gonna lie, on that trip, because we were traveling so much. Like, I was literally just reading on my Kindle, so I was obsessed. Now we're gonna move on to August. In August I read 5 books. Again, not a big month. In August and September they weren't big months, I'm not gonna lie. I think because I read so much in July, I was in a major book slump, like a major book slump. By the time we get to September, my book slump was there. It was in every point of my life. As soon as I went to pick up a book, I was like, nah. I couldn't even think about reading. Like, it would just like put me in such a bad mood when I thought about reading, which was just really bizarre. But I think it's because I read 24 books in 1 month that my brain was just like, we need a break, brain overload. So first we're going to go over the physical copies that I've read. So the first book was Shatter Me from the Shatter Me series. This is a fantasy. Loved it, read it. Again, first book in the series, so I only gave it 4 stars. But I love Julia, I love the plot, and I love the series, and I really enjoyed it. Next we read By the Thread. This book right here. Steamy. The tension, the sexual tension between these 2 characters. That's all I've got to say. Grumpy and Sunshine, assistant, boss. So many pages of pure love. Love this book. I gave this book 5 stars. I loved it, breathed it, inhaled it. Last but not least, of physical books, I read A Court of Mist and Fury. I gave this one 5 stars. Of course, this book, Rise. You saved my girl Faye. You saved her. And yeah, chef's kiss. Now let's move on to the books that I read on my Kindle in August. Number 1 was Camera Shy. This one I loved. Gave it 4 stars. This one has a female plus size protagonist. She's a bit insecure about her weight, about her body, but she decides to go for a little photo shoot. And the guy that she meets, the little photographer, he's just amazing. Like, he's what every woman wants. He is sensitive, he is sensual, he is just in tune. He is a man written by a woman. Last but not least, in August, I read this book called Captured. I gave this book a 1 star. Yeah, this book, again, no real plot, just smart, about a girl with like 4 guys, and I was just like, nah. I didn't lift this book about 50% because I got to the point and I was like, I'm losing my sanity, so I had to like escape. But yeah, dark romance but had no plot and just awful. I'm sorry to the author, but you might like it, but personally I didn't like it. I want to be really honest with you guys, and I just didn't enjoy it. Sometimes you get those Kindle reads where you're reading it and you're like, why did I pick this? You just picked it for no reason, and that was the book. That was a book that I saw. I was bored, I was in between reading books, and I clicked on it, and it was the biggest regret of my life, and that's all I've really got to say. So now let's move on to September. September, obviously, I spoke about a book slump. I read 1 book in September. Yeah, it was my worst month. The 1 book that I did read was The Score, the 3rd book in the Off-Campus series. This is Dean's book. Dean. Dean is known as like the heartthrob. He's a player. He's sleeping with every single woman that he can find, any girl, and yeah. His book, loved it, breathed it, gave it 3.5 I believe. It wasn't my favourite out of all of them, but it was a good solid read. I just love when the player gets put down on a pedestal and he actually needs to fight and actually grovel. Now we move on to October. So my book slump finally ended. I was so happy, like I was jumping for joy. When I got to the point where I was so excited to read a book, I knew my book slump had ended, and I was so freaking excited to get back to reading. And in October I read 19 books. 19 books. Buzzing. I was through the roof. So the first book I read in October is The Varsity Dad Dilemma. This one was on Kindle. I gave this one a 3 stars. This one was simple, cute, loved it, steamy. Not really much of a plot, but not to the point where I'm like, I don't know what's going on, let me leave. Next was Second Down Darling. This one's also part of the same series as the first book. This one is ex-best friend, single dad, miscommunication. I'm not really a miscommunication girl, but in this book, I really felt for the main character. She was put through hell, her sister's the devil, and that's all I've really got to say. Next is The Darkest Note. This is from a series. It's about 4 boys who were part of this rock group at high school. This one again is a bit of a bullying high school vibe, but it's not one where it's just like the girl is getting bullied by guys, but it's like she ain't taking no shit and she fights back, which we love. This one I gave a 3 stars. This one's a dark romance, high school romance. Next we had Ruthless Note, which is the 2nd book of this series, following on from the 1st book. Next is Entice. I gave this one a 4 stars. This one is the only Dad's Best Friend that I actually enjoyed. All the other ones were horrendous. This one was one that I didn't like the age gap. That was a bit that I didn't like. I gave it a 4 stars because apart from the age, these characters, they were meant for each other. Like, if it wasn't the age thing, I think I would have maybe given it a 5 stars. Next we have The Broken Note. This one is the book 3 of Redwood King series, which has The Darkest Note. And this one, again, follows the same couple. This one, they're actually together. Next we have The Forbidden Note, which is the last book in the series. I gave this one a 2 stars. This one I actually want to give it a 1 star. There was a lot of a mystery behind, like there was mystery basically. There's a mystery of something in this book. I can't tell you because it obviously ruined it and spoil it. There's a big mystery, and that's the bit that I enjoyed. But this book was horrendous. It was teacher and student, but not just that. She's your stepsister. She's older than you. Next we have another series. So I started another series. There's 5 books in this series. This one I actually really enjoyed. This one is a reverse harem, and this was the only reverse harem that I enjoyed because it had a plot as well as spiciness. It wasn't just smart, and I just really loved the characters as well. It was just a lot more adult. They had adult themes, but it was also kind of dark romance, so I did enjoy it. It wasn't my favourite, but there's 4 books in this series. So there's Blissful Masquerade, there's Perfect Convergence, Undying Resilience, Wretched Corruption, and there's Cruel Betrayal. These ones I gave 3 and 4 stars. The only one I gave 4 stars was the second book in the series because I just really loved like the plot in that book. I just felt like it was just really, really fun. But apart from that, I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't a bad, like, when I give it 3 stars, it means I enjoyed it, but it might not be everyone's cup of tea, which is why it's 3 stars. And there was things that I didn't like about it. And then last but not least of the books I read on my Kindle was Corrupt. This one is from the Devil's Night series. This one is the first book in the series. I gave this one 3 stars. This was actually a really good dark romance. I read quite a few dark romance series this year, and this one and another series I'm going to mention were my favourite by far. I love the flashback between like past and the future, and also all the mystery and all the chaos. Like, that's what I really enjoy. But those were all the books that I read on my Kindle. In terms of the books that I read in paperback, these books. So number 1, we have Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first time I ever read anything by Elsie Silver, and I was pleasantly surprised. I love a good small time romance. And Ad Cowboy, beautiful, gave this 4 stars. Next we have A Court of Wings and Ruin, 5 stars, another 5-star read. Gobbled it up. I read this book in 3 days. It's a 600-page book. 600-page book or 700-page book? I can't remember. But it was so good. I loved it. Oh, I loved it. Gobbled it. I don't want the series to end because I just love it so much. If you haven't read that Qatar series and you like fantasy or you want to get into fantasy, next was Unravel Me. This one is the second book in the Shatter Me series. I love this one a lot more than the first one. I gave this one a 4.5, I believe. Julia, I'm just obsessed with her. This book did kind of take a bit of a downgrade because the way the first book ended, Julia was very uplifted. She was empowered. She was in her best vibes, yeah? But this one, it started off with her, again, in the same kind of mindset. But the way it ended, Aaron, now I'm understanding the hype. In the first book I was like, Aaron who? Aaron what? This I'm like, Aaron. Next is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This one I gave a 4.5 stars. This one I found it really good. It was just magical, cute, very fairy tale like. I felt like a little child again. If you haven't read it, go read it. This is the first book in the series. Can't wait to read the rest of the series. I actually have both books, so that's what I'm going to be tackling in 2024. Definitely recommend. Next we have Heartless by Elsie Silver. This book right here, I loved it. 5 stars. 5 Gillian stars. Dedicate. That's all I've got to say. Yeah, I just loved it. I loved the 2 characters, the chemistry, single dad. What more do you want? Beautiful. Last but not least, October, I read The Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing, beautiful. Gave it 4.5, 4 stars, I believe. This is by Rebecca Yarros. Never read anything by her. This one took a storm on TikTok. Everyone loved it. Everyone breathed it. So I got it because, you know, I keep up with the trends sometimes. And yeah, I loved it. Dragons, that's all I've got to say. How to Train Your Dragon plus Harry Potter, chaos and cliffhangers. The way this book ended, oh my god, can't wait for the next book. And yeah, I love it. I love the gold, it shined, it's beautiful. I love it. But those were all the books that I read in October. Now we move on to November. November, I actually kept on my reading streak. October, November, December was really good. Apart from August and September, October to December was my best reading months, and I just loved the reading towards the end of the year. I feel like I read more in winter time than summertime, because summertime I'm more out and about, whereas winter time more full time, I'm at home, cozy, and like reading a book is just perfect. But in November I read 16 books. First I read Watch Your Mouth. This one I gave a 4 stars. This is A Brother's Best Friend, hockey romance. It was just so cute and spicy. Next was King of Pride by Anna Hugh. This is the second book of the King and Seer series. Kai Kai Kai. Kai and Isabella, love them so much. Chemistry, hot. These ones remind me a bit of Jules and Josh, but a lot more healthier, and I just love them. They were just so cute. I'm literally losing my voice now from how much I've been shouting. I actually need to dial it down. Sometimes I can get too excited, and I'm just learning to just calm myself down. Like, it doesn't need to be loud. I can just be calm, collected. I need a bit of help. Next, I read The King of Greed. This is the third book of the Kings and series. I love this couple. This one's second chance romance. Personally, I don't know why she took him back. I wouldn't, but if a man ignores me, see ya, I'm out the door. Loved it. It was cozy, it was simple. I loved the groveling, so I gave this one a 4 stars. It was a really good addition to the third book of the series. Next, we read Hideaway, which is the second book in the Devil's Night series. This one I gave a 4 stars. I really liked the storyline of this one. Again, this dark romance, I was just hooked. And I love the mystery aspect of it. Next is Kill Switch. I gave this one a 5 stars. Damon. What is it with anyone named Damon? Why are they always hot? Why are they always sexy? Why are they always misunderstood? They're always the better person. Well, not the better person, because some of the stuff he done was just like... But it's like, I can forgive you, boo, because everything you went through, your trauma, like, it's just misunderstood. And Damon, he's toxic, but I love him. And anyone but named Damon, I just feel like I love them, especially with Vampire Diaries. Damon, he just owned my heart. And reading another Damon, but obviously he's not a vampire, just loved it. Next, we read Haunting Adeline by H.D. Charlton. This book must be my favourite dark romance book of 2023, I'm not gonna lie. Some people might not like the plot of this book, but I'm a dark romance girly. It's my guilty pleasure. And Zayd and Adeline, the plot, I was hooked. The tension, beautiful. The way it ended, I was done dirty, but I have the second book, so hopefully I won't be disappointed with the second book. I know people say the second book is a lot more traumatic than the first book, which I know I'm not prepared for, but I know I will enjoy it. Next, we had A Court of Frost and Starlight. This one's not that big. I gave this one 3 stars. Simple, sweet. It was like a little novella between A Court of Rings and Ruin and A Court of Silver Flames, and I loved it. I just felt like Christmas, and it was a nice wintry read. Next, we have The Goal by L. Kennedy. This one is the 4th book. This one is my favourite book of the series. This one is pregnancy trope. It is kind of enemies to lovers, Grumpy X Sunshine, and seeing these 2 characters, Sabrina and Tucker, become parents. I love Sabrina. She was just so misunderstood, and yeah, I just love this book. Gave it a 4 stars. Loved it. Next, we have Archer's Voice. Archer's Voice, again, gave it 5 stars. Obsessed. Archer, my baby. If you haven't read this book, go and read it. At first I was skeptical because I heard it was a sad book, but I loved it. This actually had a lot more smut than I thought it would. Next, we have The Ex-Hex. The Ex-Hex I really enjoyed. Again, this was a cozy, simple read. This one is a witchy vibe, very much Sabrina the Teenage Witch vibes, which I loved. Easy read, quick, kept my attention, good, loved it. There is a second book, but I didn't get to read it by October time. But it was a good book. It was really thin as well, which I loved, which meant it was easy to read. Next, we have The Other Black Girl. This book I ended up giving a 1 star. I actually DNF'd this book. I had such high hopes for this book because I read so much about it, but I just couldn't get stuck to it. I wanted the mystery and the tension to come in a lot earlier. It was like halfway through the books and nothing had happened, and I just didn't like the change of perspective. I understand shifting from past and future and past and present, but like some of the perspectives, I was like, who the hell is this talking now? Like, it was just random people, not even the same characters or the main characters. And yeah, that's the bit I didn't like about it, but I was expecting more from it, so it did disappoint me. I would say this is my most disappointing read, but yeah, you might enjoy it if you read it. Personally, I didn't enjoy it. Next, we have Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. This is the second book in the Knock 'Em Out series. This one, loved it, breathed it. I loved the main 2 characters. This was like enemies to lovers. It's close proximity. Loved it, loved the spice, but they also support each other. And yeah, I loved it. It was a really cute book. Next we read Rules of the Game. This one I gave a 4 stars. This is Brother's best friend. Next we have Rules of Our Own, which is also from the same series. This one is book 4. I gave this one a 4 stars. This is a reverse Hiram. Next we have The Secrets You Keep. This one again is a reverse Hiram. I gave this 3 stars. I'm not gonna lie, I actually can't remember the plot. And then last but not least is Black Knight. I gave this book a 3 stars. This is book 4 of a series. It's ex-best friends, enemies to lovers. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought it would, but again, it was a nice solid read, so definitely recommend maybe checking that out. Those were all the books that I read in November. Now we're going to move on to December. December I read 9 books. The first book I read was The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. This is the spin-off of the Off-Campus series. This features Gigi, Hannah and Garrett's daughter, and I just love this book so much. I gave this a 4.5. It was just so refreshing, and Gigi as a character, seeing her follow from her dad's footsteps, I just loved it so much. Plus the cameos from the other characters from the Off-Campus series made it chef's kiss. Also I read The Legacy, which is the last book of the Off-Campus series. So I read this one first, then I read the spin-off, and this one just kind of summarises the book, shows you the couples like 5 years later or in the future and like what happens. And yeah, it was a good book. I gave this one a 3 stars just because it wasn't the best. The rest of the books I read were all on my Kindle because it was very much a Kindle read. But the first book on my Kindle that I read was Spin the Bottle. I gave this one a 3.5 because I really liked how much I could relate to the female main character. She is a plus size female and she's always had difficulty with like her image, especially at college and stuff like that, and she meets a guy who is a hockey player, I believe, or a football player, and he automatically takes interest in her and they become a couple, friends with benefits. And I just love the story so much, and I just feel so sorry for the main character because there's some things that she says, like there's one thing that she says that she prefers to have one night stands with men rather than having relationships because she knows that men don't date fat girls, but having one night stands is something that happens. She says that when she's out with her friends, what would happen is no guy will confront her or come near her or ask her to dance or anything like that, but she'll get a little message from guys saying, oh, I want to sleep with her, or guys that used to bully her will like text her saying if they wanted to sleep with her, stuff like that, and it's always a secret. And whereas this guy, he really likes her and really fancies her, so it is such a cute book and I just loved it. Next we have Dear Grumpy Boss. So the next 3 books is part of a series. Again, this book is a bit like the Knock 'Em Out series, but it's a little bit more business kind of oriented and I just loved it. Dear Grumpy Boss, you can kind of guess, is a boss slash assistant or boss slash work employee. Next we have Sincerely Your Inconvenient Wife. This one is about 2 people that end up getting married as like an agreement. So the main character, he needs to get married to be able to take it more seriously, and he meets this girl not realizing it's one of his friends, girlfriend's best friend, and they basically get married under false pretenses, fake dating, but obviously they realise they like each other because the first time they meet each other they kind of have like a little fling, and then obviously they start hating each other afterwards, but it's just really cute. Love the little notes. She'd always like email him saying your inconvenient wife. And last but not least is Please You're Intolerable. This one is a boss slash assistant again, well, not boss assistant but boss employee, and what she does is she writes little notes and puts them in her desk. So when she goes and writes down his to-do list of the day, she'll write a little note like you're an idiot, or I hope your day goes bad, or I hope your shoes get wet, and he finds it and he doesn't actually realise that she's pregnant until like 6 months later. And yeah, it's just like cute little messages. He grovels a lot and he shows that he really cares for her. Like he takes her in, helps her so much because she gets done dirty by the baby daddy. And yeah, it's just a cute little read. I gave this one a 4 stars as well. Next we read The Worst Kind of Promise. I gave this book a 3.5. It's a brother's best friend, miscommunication. Next we have One Week in Paradise. I gave this book a 4 stars. I really wish I read this in the summer though, and this is about a girl who is an influencer, but something happens with her ex-boyfriend and she gets invited to this trip to Jamaica, and obviously the resort doesn't know that her boyfriend had broken up and that, so she gets her brother's best friend to go with her. Her brother's best friend actually mentioned volunteers, and you actually realise that he actually has a secret crush on her, and they get together. It's just cute and I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Last but not least is Nightfall, which is the last book in the Devil Knight series. I love this book so much. I love the way it ended. The only thing I didn't like is the way Will kind of treated her, and a lot of the things that had happened, it wasn't actually her fault, even though people did blame her a lot. She did deal with a lot, like she was getting domestically abused by a certain person in her life. And yeah, I just love the book. I love the way the series ended, and it's definitely one of my favourite dark romances. But those are all the books that I read in 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and reviewing all the books that I read this year. I can't believe I read 100 books, and I can't wait to see how many I can read in 2024. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. And as I always say, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!